Thank you guys so much for staying. I know it's been a long but amazing afternoon. My name is Christina Pascucci. I'm a reporter and anchor at KTLA. And I mean, as I'm sure we've heard all day, this is something that touches so many different people. Personally, I'm very passionate about it because my sister was diagnosed bipolar just a couple years ago. And she's 15 years older than I, so it was later in life for her. And you know, as a kid, witnessed suicide attempts and, you know, her not understanding what was happening to her. And so it is an honor to be with you two powerhouses who are bringing this conversation forth. And I'd like to start with you, Machen, if you can just talk about a little bit why you're so passionate about it. I know you have a very beloved family member in the audience, or two.
Yes. In 2011, my son Sylvester was diagnosed with bipolar, and it's been a 6-7 year journey now, and he's doing really well, very stable. He also just celebrated 6 months sobriety. Sylvester, stand, say hi. Come say a little something. Just say a little something.
Okay. So I just wanted to speak.
I think so. Try.
Hello?
Do you want to speak into my mic?
I'll just speak loudly. So it's been an honor to be here today, and I feel like I have hope for the future because it seems like the mental health community is like making leaps and bounds, and I've been involved, obviously, in mental health since maybe 2011, 2012, and there wasn't a whole lot of help. And so seeing this going on is really amazing, and it's empowering to be a part of it, to not only have mental health issues, but to be a part of the solution, because I feel like I have something to offer. And so, you know, that's why I'm here today. So thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Thank you. So as we were going through trying to find him help, I had worked with Glenn Close in Damages, and I saw that she was being a huge advocate, and she had created an organization called Bring Change to Mind. So I just reached out to her and I said, look, I understand what you're going through and I want to do anything I can to help. And so we became ambassadors in 2014.
And Bring Change to Mind, if you could just give people an idea of what exactly the goal and mission of the organization is.
Yeah, Bring Change to Mind is strictly to erase stigma. It's to talk about it, to share your story, and to just break down all of these barriers and just erase stigma. So there's lots of wonderful things that it's doing, and one of its new chapters is Bring Change to Mind High School, which is how I got to meet Caroline.
Who is 17 years old, by the way, and just phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah, she deserves a round of applause, both of them. I don't even know where to start with you. It's been such an honor chatting with both of you today. Can you talk a little bit about your own experience and just what led you here, because you went through some traumatic things and you were seeking resources?
Yes, so at the end of my 7th grade year in 2013, I watched 3 of my close friends get hit by a car. And it was during school hours, coming back from a physical education class at a nearby park. And 3 days later, we went into lockdown because we had an active shooter right near the school. Those 2 events in the same week were something that brought a lot of damage to me, but also prompted a new way of looking at my life. And I had had family issues with generational things of depression and anxiety, and I finally got diagnosed. And I have depression, I have anxiety, I have OCD, and I have panic disorder. And those things, as much as they seem like they could hold me back, they never have. I was suicidal for a long time, and I got out of that. And I've been so lucky to receive the support that my family has brought me and my peers, and I want to bring that support to other people. So I worked with my administration in my high school to hire our very first mental health counselor, and our school was started by a psychiatrist, so it was really great to be able to hire someone that was directly for counseling. And now we're working on a peer education program and a peer advisory board. Because I believe that the biggest change that someone can make is student to student. Kids listen to teachers talk all the time, but what really makes a difference is hearing someone your own age speak to you about issues, because that's what's really inspiring. So I plan on sharing my story with other kids my age, because it's really important to see someone who is dealing with things and is working through things and is a highly functioning individual, and can still accomplish everything else as anybody else.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think it would be really interesting to hear from your perspective. Obviously, we all know what happened in Parkland, Florida. And these school shootings, everyone says they have to stop. When I was covering the walkout and the response to this latest mass shooting, a lot of kids were implementing the idea of, okay, let's walk out and let's talk about what we can do to help our fellow students, to have compassion for someone who seems like they have some sort of struggle mentally. So what's your take on that?
I think what the students in Parkland are doing is just fantastic. And it's really inspiring to see a group of young people that are pursuing such effective means of conquering issues. And it really gives me a lot of hope for the future. And it really prompts me to think that my generation is going to change things. And we aren't just waiting until we can vote. We are doing things now.
You have a friend who started an app.
I do.
And called Sit With Us.
Yes.
Which I think is amazing.
A dear friend of mine, Natalie Hampton, who was supposed to be here today but couldn't make it, she created an app a year ago called Sit With Us, which is an anti-bullying app where it's somewhat like a social media app, but you can invite people to come and sit with you at your table at lunch, so no one eats alone. And the app has now been implemented all over the world in high schools and universities and now in the workplace, which is really interesting. But it's a really fantastic program because she was bullied for such a long time. So this is really what my generation is doing. We're taking issues that we've dealt with and taking action on them and not waiting around for anybody else to do them for us. We're going to take action and do things for ourselves.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love this. It's just this unprecedented surge of activism amongst our youth. It is beautiful to see. Machen, what would you say as a mother? What would you tell parents? How can they, what is your advice?
I feel like, well, when we were going through the family crisis that we were going through, it very much felt like we were alone in navigating against a medical system that was stacked against us. Our insurance company didn't have any mental health care whatsoever. And actually, because of the Affordable Care Act, it was implemented that you can still have coverage. There should be no holes in your coverage. And you know, any pre-existing conditions won't limit you from having access. So that helped a bit. But we were being turned away from treatment center after treatment center. We were being told that really the only help you could have is if you could plunk down $60,000 to walk into a treatment center on day one. And maybe there are some people out there that can afford that, but we were not a family that could, and there's many, many families that can't. So it just, for me, it started this advocacy just to save my son's life, but as soon as we got him treatment, and he is absolutely my hero because he works really hard on his stability, his sobriety, and I immediately wanted to use a very reluctant celebrity platform for good, so that's what I'm doing now. For parents, there were a lot of educators that were bringing up things like, we think your son might have ADHD. You need to put him on Ritalin. And now in hindsight, now that we know what his proper diagnosis is, that would have been the worst thing that we could have done because it would have brought out a manic episode. So it's that kind of information that I want other families to have and other parents to have. I want there to be more access and more mental health education. So if you see any warning signs, you're not quite sure, just like you have to go to the doctor to be enrolled in school physically, I think that there should be adequate mental help, checkups, and maybe we can, you know, head this off at an early stage so that What we're doing right now is that we're waiting for family members to have a mental health crisis in order to understand that this person needs help. Can we please stop waiting for the crisis before we stop losing people? Before you're turned away from an emergency room and then you lose your loved one? Can we please see the warning signs and help it? It's like every other organ in our body. Like we were hearing earlier, when you go to an emergency room and you're having a heart attack, you're not turned away. But when your brain is having the equivalent of its heart attack, you're turned away, and that has to end. So all parents, all support groups, be active, do what you can in your community to just Google mental health in your community and just do whatever you can to help and to just talk about your story and get this out there.
There's been a lot of talk, debate about how to treat it, how to treat mental illness, and I know it varies from depending what the person's experiencing, but what do you think about what made the difference for your son, and what would you say for medication versus alternative treatments, both of you?
Well, I always have a bit of a regret because I was this big naturopath and, organic everything and use herbs, don't use prescription medications. That's, horrible. And it wasn't until our son got the right medication and the right diagnosis that saved his life. And so there's not only the medication that might go with the diagnosis, but there's many other holistic things that you can do with the way that you eat, your lifestyle, your sleep regimen, supporting yourself nutritionally, and then the right therapy, whatever that therapy is for you. So, I think that's super important, and I feel somewhat guilty for driving this no pharmaceuticals because it saved his life. Sometimes it's needed, you know?
Caroline, what do you think?
Yeah, before I was put on medication, I was doing talk therapy and then hypnosis and then light therapy. And it was just an ongoing time of what can we do before we put her on medication? And as helpful as that all was for a period of time, medication was what I needed. And thankfully my mother stepped in, and as someone who has dealt with mental health issues, she was able to step in and change my psychiatrist and get me on the right medication. And so to this day, I'm on medication, and I also continue talk therapy. And that's what's worked best for me, but it really depends on the person. I know people that hypnosis has been the greatest thing that's changed their life. And I think it's just about exploring options and not limiting yourself to one thing, because not every person is the same. And not every person is made up of the same things that will be treated the same way.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. We're already running out of time, which is crazy, but a call to action. If people were to leave here and do one thing, what would you recommend to help break the stigma, something that we could each do in our everyday lives?
Advocate. Advocate in whatever way you can. I know that there's been lots of stories shared up here, but I was told by an insurance adjuster that, well, some people die. You're just going to have to come to terms that your son may die.
No way.
And I was like, you're my insurance and you're supposed to be working for me. And that, I think, probably was the moment that I was so pissed off. I was like, I'm going to change the way things are. So don't give up on your loved one. Educate yourself. NAMI is an amazing resource. There's a lot of family support there. And do whatever you can. Keep fighting, because we were told no so many times, and I just kept calling back. And that's when I found out about financial aid or a scholarship or this or that. So advocate, advocate, advocate.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think the one takeaway I would say is speak from the heart. Tell your story. Don't be afraid to open up, because more than likely there's someone out there who's dealing with something that's very similar to you. And I think for students in particular, don't be afraid to take action, because that comes first, and change comes first, and the future comes first. And we're planning the rest of our futures right now. So this is the time to open up and speak to each other and get involved and take action. So don't be afraid to do that.
And thank you everybody who's come here. All of you being here to talk about this is part of the sea change.
This is advocacy right here.
Yeah. So
Yes,
thank
it
you
is.
for allowing us.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for your courage, your boldness. Just appreciate you. And we're up.